Welcome to the Floored-U-Cation podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Hedin, owner of Illustrious Hardwoods in Mesa, Arizona. We're here to talk with contractors from all across the country about the issues that matter to you. This week's guest is Jim Freeman. Jim works for Metro Floors in Calhoun, Georgia. After working in the family flooring business, being a radio DJ, and running his own commercial carpet cleaning business, Jim became a technical rep for Metro Floor. One of his largest responsibilities is assisting homeowners with the installation of life-proof flooring. Listen in while we discuss when you need to call a rep for help, some of my background, and possible transitions out of the installation business. Jim Freeman, are you on the line?
I'm here.
Awesome. Welcome to Floored-U-Cation Pro. Thanks for joining us.
It's good to be here.
Good. Why don't you go ahead and give us a little background on who you are, what you do, and how you've gone through being in this crazy flooring industry.
So my name is Jim Freeman. I currently work in the Metro Floored Technical Department under the HMTX Industries umbrella. I also handle a lot of the customer service calls for LifeProof flooring through our Halstead division. Okay. And so I got my start. I got my start in flooring when I was about 14 years old. Dad said, "You're working this weekend." He was a general contractor, but did flooring on the weekends. So me and Dad and Uncle Arnie went out that weekend, and we did a house where the guy had 14 fish tanks.
Ooh.
He had 14 fish tanks. So most of my day was carrying fish tanks and buckets of water back and forth. You know, we would install the carpet, put the fish tank back, something like that.
Oh,
so that was my intro to flooring. And I worked for Dad's company for a few years. Went to school for broadcasting for a few years, but was always in the flooring industry or flooring business with my parents. And then I went to work for DuPont Flooring Systems and got into the commercial end of it. Worked for them for a few years. I was done. Physically, I was done installing. I couldn't do it anymore. So
okay.
They didn't want to let me go, so they made me the manager of the carpet cleaning side. And I learned a lot about maintenance over on that side. I worked for them for about 5 years, and then ended up starting my own maintenance business that I ran for about 15, 20 years.
Okay. Vast experiences between family business, on your own, installation side, maintenance side. That is just a wealth of knowledge to have.
It helps. It helps on a daily basis. A lot of the problems we see could be from installation. It could be from maintenance. So having, experience in both is definitely a big help.
Yeah. And then how did you end up over with Metro Floor?
Well, it would be around February or March. My wife and I would start talking about, we lived in Pennsylvania at the time. We'd start talking about, what the hell are we doing? It's cold as hell up here. And we wanted to move south. Now, owning a carpet cleaning and a floor maintenance company, it's tough to just pick it up and move it south. You'd end up not having any customers for a good year. Mm-hmm. You built that business back up. So I was looking for a way to move south, and I found a job listing with Metro Floor to be in their technical department. And I was reading down the list of what you needed to know, and I was like, yep, I can do that, and I can do that, and I can do that. So, I sent them a resume, and here we are 3 years later, and I'm still working with Metro Floor.
Awesome. No,
it's a great company. Great company to work with. They're like family.
Cool. No, that's good. That's what I love hearing about a lot of these flooring gigs is that even with some of the bigger companies, it really is. It still feels like a family business, and people take care of you, and you get ingrained into a culture.
Right. And the culture with Halstead and Metro Floor is a great company culture. It really is like working with family.
Cool. Awesome. Okay. So, boy, there's definitely times when guys are on the floor or gals and you get yourself into a predicament and you don't necessarily know if it's you, if it's material, if it's anything. We're very proud people a lot of times. We don't want to admit defeat.
Yeah.
How do I know that I actually need to go get that set of instructions, look at the bottom, find the phone number, and call you?
Well, I think when you've got a problem. Depending on what it is, whether it's ledging, you got boards that are one's higher than the other one, or you've got gaps, or you've got something that just isn't right. You've got to stop and look at the basics first, and that's when we talk about going back to the instructions. What are the specs on this floor? What is the subfloor flatness requirement? Where did we go wrong?
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to look at what's going wrong and think to yourself, what is it that could be making this go wrong? So if you think it's a problem with the product, you definitely call the 1-800 number that's on the box and talk to customer service. And if it is a technical problem that they can't solve, they will send you to me.
Okay. And I mean, we can definitely get into you with MetroFloor, and we can go down there. I know that you're very active in the forums online, and you're always happy to help people when they're running into problems with LifeProof, which is sold through Home Depot. A lot of guys deal with that a lot.
Yeah, a good part of my day to day is talking to do-it-yourselfers and talking them through a LifeProof installation.
Okay, so I think we can definitely get into a little bit of that. I think for right now we can keep it a little bit more generic. Let's focus on just dealing with in general. Numbers are there. There's companies with reps like yourself.
Right.
And I don't care if you're putting down the self level, the patch, the floor, you're helping the client out, and for some reason you're installing the valance for the blinds. It probably comes with a set of instructions. And we're going to beat a dead horse on this show. Please read them. I don't care if you've read them 100 times before, because I know you can testify to this. How many times in 3 years have you changed the LifeProof instructions?
In 3 years, I know there was a change about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
And there might be a couple of changes that we have that we want to make, but it's a difficult, long process.
Mm-hmm. But there are changes, and it's just because you've read them once doesn't mean, or 100 times doesn't mean you know them.
Oh, yes.
So
it was one of the things that I would, I catch help from the crew on, is sitting down and reading the instructions. It didn't matter what product we opened up, if there was a set of instructions there, sit down and read them. It only takes a minute.
Correct.
Take a break,
And as men, I know what I'm doing. I don't need them, like there's definitely that stereotype, but when you're putting thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars of yours on the line as an installer, as a owner operator of a company, what's a couple minutes on instructions?
Well, and look at it from the customer's point of view too. Sitting down with the customer and looking at the instructions is not a bad idea as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they may think, well, this guy's reading the instructions right in front of me. No, I've installed this product many times, but they do change things in the instructions. And I want to sit with you and make sure that everybody understands every part of this installation.
Correct. And the care instructions are always in there. And one of the last things I do as an installer at the end of the job is go over how to care for the floor. Well,
that's a very important step.
Where else should I get that info from than the company itself?
Correct.
So, all right. We're reading the instructions, and we're starting to go through the install, but we're having trouble getting pieces to lock together, or it's not lining up right. There's gapping. Like, what kind of things are we looking for?
Well,
we know to jump on the phone with you.
Subfloor flatness is always key on a floating floor. If we're talking about floating floors.
Mm-hmm. Well, any floor really.
Any floor, subfloor flatness is always key. So if you're having problems getting it together, it may be that you didn't start straight and you're building tension into the floor. It could be the subfloor flatness. There could be several things. If it's something that you don't understand what's going on, it's time to call the manufacturer. That's what they're there for. That's why they have customer service.
Mm-hmm. And how often do you think it's actually... I mean, how often is it going to be a manufacturer problem, you think? Or is it like 95% of the time or more? It's always installer error.
95% of the time or more, it's either the installer or a site condition that causes it.
Okay. It's very not it's not often that there's actually a milling issue or a bad run,
Right.
things like that. Okay.
Right. And I see that on day to day when I do claims material, the do it yourself or ones they come in and the material looks great. And they send us 2 boxes from the job and the material, great. And you look at the pictures from the job site and you can tell it was an installation problem. But, with a do it yourself, you expect a little bit of that.
Yeah. So, as a professional, we need to, one, not be scared to call the number and reach out for help if we're struggling, but we also need to make sure that we're going through the proper steps to get there. And I think that's what Jim's getting at. When he's saying that 95% is generally installer or site conditions, we need to do our jobs properly. As even if you're the store owner, you need to make sure that the guys you're hiring to be out in the field for you are getting these things done right, because who's that claim come down on? And whether it goes to the installer or not, you as the store owner end up having an upset customer. Their job's delayed. Their job has to get redone. The last thing I ever want any of my clients to go through is another flooring installation.
Right.
It's a pain. It rips apart your house. It throws off your life. Any construction project will do that. But
again,
exactly. They already went through it once. Now you got to take it all out and start over. So we need to make sure that we're hitting those steps and that we're going in and we're getting proper floor prep. We're reading the instructions. We're installing it correctly so that we can say, hey, I hit A, B, and C, 1, 2, and 3 on your checklist of install things. This has got to be on you.
Flat, smooth, dry, and structurally sound.
Mm-hmm.
Really what we need to cover.
So we'll look at life proof. And so flat, dry, structurally sound, everyone reads that. What do we really need to know?
So on a life proof product, we're talking the flatness tolerance is 1/4 inch over 10 feet. And we don't want to see any abrupt height variances. So it can't be 1/4 inch over 10 feet that happens in, within a 1/2 inch.
Mm-hmm.
And what you want to do is grind off the high spots and fill in the low spots to make your floor nice and flat. The next thing you want it to be is smooth. So the best way to check a floor for smoothness is to run your hand over it. It's the best way to feel the floor. Don't just look at it. And you can also use a very bright flashlight turned on its side to let you know how smooth and flat a floor is.
Okay.
Structurally sound means that there's no up and down movement in the floor. It needs to be structurally sound. It can't move up and down. And then the last one is dry. You need to do your moisture tests. And if you're a professional, you should be documenting every moisture test on every job, so that if there is a claim down the road, you can say, yes, I did my moisture tests. Here they are.
Couldn't agree more. And so from the moisture testing perspective, what do guys need to be doing? How much do they need to document that would fit what you would need to know if a claim happened?
Well, we need to see some sort of documentation. A lot of times with claims, there's zero documentation. What we'd like to see is a third party documentation, but I know that's not always possible or financially feasible to do that. So if you're doing RH or calcium chloride testing, just document every part of it and keep that in a file for as long as you can.
And it's super easy these days. You got your cell phone on you. Take a picture, email it to yourself, client name, date,
right?
Done. It's saved in Gmail.
So, and what that does is that covers your butt down the road. If there is a problem and it comes back to moisture, you can say, yes, I did my test. And at that time, the moisture tests were within spec.
Yeah.
Here they are right here.
And that's going to be one of the biggest keys is that all those moisture tests are a snapshot in time. But Correct. It says that at that point, you were good to do what you did. So Right. If it ends up being that a moisture problem developed down the road, that's not on you. That comes down on the homeowner because they had something else develop.
Correct.
So, and that's where the documentation is key, because now you have proof that you saw that it was okay at that time, and then down the road it wasn't, and so you can defend yourself. All right, so we're doing our moisture test. We have our floor flat. You know, we've got to start installing stuff. So this may insult part of our audience, but I don't think so. I think most guys are going to be understanding, and really everyone's got to go back to basics sometimes. So how are we needing to start this floor so that we truly have a good start? You know, we know that it's going to be true and straight.
Well, what we need to do is we need to do some measuring and some laying out. You're going to have to lay out every job that you do and balance your installation. Especially on the floating systems, you don't want a little tiny strip down one wall. You know, so you're going to have to balance that installation. You may have to do some math. I was never a big fan of math. I'm a little dyslexic, so I like to dry lay stuff. I know on bigger jobs that gets difficult, but you know, there are ways to do it. So I like to dry lay stuff whenever, to make sure that I've got a balanced installation.
Okay. And I mean, look, if we're doing a whole house, can you really balance a whole house? You're probably going to end up with slivers here and there, but it's just a matter of figuring out, if I put a sliver on the wall in the master bedroom versus the hallway, what's going to look better? You got to weigh your options, but
and that takes some measuring and some planning out first. So planning before the job is key on.
Okay. And so we need to get our first couple of rows in. And
So
go ahead.
And I can speak to the LifeProof product. I like to tell guys to start those first two rows a little bit away from a wall, or where those first two rows would be, by snapping a chalk line, and then following the material for those first two rows, making sure that you're following the material and not the wall. At that point, once you get the first two rows finished, you can scribe that fill piece along the wall in so that it's perfect and fits to the wall perfectly.
Okay.
You know, from that point on, you know, once the spacers are in place and you've got enough spacers, that's one of the mistakes I see, that guys aren't using enough spacers. Once you get enough spacers in there, as you work away from that, you're generally in good shape once you get started straight.
Okay. I think that's a good point. So what's enough spacers? Because I put one on every seam, and then obviously the start and stop of the wall. So is that enough, or do I need more than that?
It really depends on the wall. I mean, what you don't want is those rows to move. So you've got to put it at any point where you can get kind of a pinch point where the spacer is going to hold. Sometimes the spacers kick back underneath of the wall a little bit, which will allow that part of the floor to move. I installed, you know, more than 20 years ago. I always used the product itself. I would cut up scraps of the product and use that as spacers along the wall, because they're a little bit bigger and give you a little bit more, you know, meat to your spacers.
Okay. I like it. So if you can feel it having some movement as you're tapping pieces in or anything like that, go add a couple more spacers.
And I think you would probably see that as well. If you're tapping stuff together and you start getting gaps, or stuff starts moving where you already installed it, that's a good way to see that you've got stuff moving around. You're tapping it down.
Okay. All right. So we've got it installed. We've got a layout balance. We're moving along.
One of the questions I see a lot of the times is when they get to a doorway, you know, on the LifeProof product, you have to angle it up to lock on the long side, and it's difficult to get it under the doorway angled up at the same time. So you've got to shave off that little bit of a locking mechanism so that you don't have to angle it up at that point. And then replace that then with just a little bit of super glue before you slap those two pieces together. But that's one of those questions I get a lot. How do we go under doorways?
Yeah. No, shaving that off and pulling it back, or using a mallet to kind of get it into place after the rest of it's sitting right is key. That super glue is going to hold it in there well. Just clean it up right away, so you're not having to take a ton of acetone or something to the product and eat away.
And what I find, especially on the darker colors, you need to get the super glue off pretty quickly, because just the vapors from the super glue can leave like a white marring of the finish.
Oh wow!
So if you just wipe it up super quick, that won't happen. And you see that on the darker colors, not on the lighter colors.
Okay. Good info. I like that. All right. So we're moving along. Bathtubs, you know, or sliding doors. I want to go tight. I don't want to put in a transition.
At a sliding door, I gotta suggest an end molding at a sliding door. If the customer really is against that, you could fill that space with 100% silicone sealant, a color matched silicone sealant, to fill that space. It's not a problem. You want to do that in wet areas anyways, anywhere where there's potential water getting down the wall and underneath of the floor.
Okay. And I can't go tight. I have to leave that 1/4 inch. I can't leave half inch on the other side of the room so that it has more room to expand.
No, you can't leave it tight on one side and leave extra expansion space on the other. You need to leave a 1/4 inch expansion space around any fixed vertical object.
Okay.
I know that sounds like I'm reading from the instruction book.
Well, you wrote it, so it sounds about right. And so okay. If you come out on a job and everything else is done to a T, but I went tight on the tub and the slider, and it's buckling in a room that's nowhere near those two, am I still at fault?
Right. No, see, with the company that I work for, we're not that company that just blames any little thing that we can find. If it's tight in the bathroom and on the other side of the house it's buckling, you can obviously say it's not the fact that it's tight in the bathroom that's making it buckle over here.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to try to figure out what that problem is over here, because if we're going to replace the floor, we don't want that same problem coming back.
Yeah.
So we're going to get to the bottom of it. And we definitely are one of those companies that stands behind our products. So if it's a product defect, we stand behind it.
Okay. I know. I like that.
If it's a site condition, we get to the bottom of it and figure it out so that it's not a problem again.
Okay. And I think that's going to be really rare, because I've heard a lot of stories where the problem has nothing to do with an install choice in another area of the house and the installer's at fault because that was wrong, which makes the entire installation wrong.
Well, our technical department is built of installers. Everybody that's in our technical department was an ex-installer. So we're kind of, the installer's champion out there saying, no, this is not something that an installer would see.
Mm-hmm.
There's times where we're like, would the installer be able to see that or not? Should he have gone on with the installation? Sometimes it's a sheen issue where you might not have seen that depending on the lighting situation in the house.
Mm-hmm.
But the next morning you come in and it's blam, holy moly.
Yeah.
Look at that. And that's the kind of thing that we actually take the installer into consideration. Should he have seen it? Should he stop the installation, or should he move forward?
Okay. And that's another good point, is that you need to get up from what you're doing. You can't stay on the floor 100% of the time. And so if there is a sheen issue, and you're not going to see it sitting on the floor only looking at the row that you're working on. So
right. And if you're working under fluorescent lighting, you're almost never going to see a sheen issue. It's that low level lighting that comes in the evening or the morning through a window that just shows the sheen in a much better or much way. So it really depends on lighting situations. Now, if you see there's an actual defect in the product, there's a lump or a dent or something, that's the point at which you've got to stop and call the manufacturer. That's not something you want to keep installing, because it's something you could visually see. And why did you keep installing that?
Yeah. And I want to, carrying on with just being able to get up and take a step back. All these man-made products, there's only a certain amount of variations that you're making, or patterns. And there's usually my standard, I think, that I find is 6.
Right.
Get up, stand up, take a step back, look at the floor. Make sure you're not getting the patterns touching too much. Make sure that you're not, if there's definitely like light and dark pieces, take a step back, look at it, and make sure you're making everything mixed up, because
I couldn't agree more.
It goes with that back to the, if you're going to take the time to figure out a layout and balance the floor so that, the hallway has a 2-inch rip on both sides, you don't want half the hallway dark and half the hallway light and not intermixed evenly.
Right. So go back and make sure all of your date codes are exactly the same before you install that floor, and then shuffle those boxes. So, and once they're shuffled, like you said, take a step back, look at your actual layout. When you're racking out your floor, be like, oh, I got 2 dark ones next to each other. We better pull that one out. We do it all the time. You pull that one out, you put another one in there. But once it's installed, it's difficult to do.
Mm-hmm. No, I definitely don't want to go back and have to rip up half a floor or try and replace individual boards in a hallway or something like that. That would be miserable. Okay, let's see here. Working right through. Installing it, looking at it. What else do
What
we got?
I
Go
got
ahead.
a question for you.
Okay.
What podcast number will this be?
Let's see. We were at, I
I
think
put you on the spot, didn't I?
yeah, I think we were at 13 for 2019. That one came out. That one, two, three. It's like 16 or 17, I want to say.
Oh, okay.
But the numbering's going to restart because I called 2019 season 1, and then I called this 2020. I started a new season, so this is season 2, and it will be, I believe, episode 4.
Awesome. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, you're good.
But
I
since
like
I
it.
got you on the spot, I've got another question for you.
Okay.
Square or round blades?
I use square. Well, and I don't use the square. I'm sorry. I just use a regular utility knife blade, like the triangle one.
On carpet.
Well, I don't ever do carpet. I just do
Oh.
vinyl I do laminate vinyl and engineered hardwood. And so I'll cut carpet up with the utility knife, and then I'll score my vinyl and snap it over my leg.
All right. One more. I got one more question for you, and I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, you're good.
Does pineapple belong on pizza?
No.
See?
We were good until then, right? Now we're not friends.
We were good until then. Ham, pineapple, and lots of garlic.
I don't even like ham on pizza really, and that's probably why. I honestly don't even really like bacon on my pizza.
Wow. I think you're gonna have to turn your man card in on that one.
Maybe. I mean I like bacon. I just don't want it on pizza.
Wow.
Oh well. Now apparently I'm being interviewed. So welcome to Jim's podcast.
All right.
Where
So,
are we going?
how long have you been in the business? Where did you start?
Well, I just released that episode. You got to go back and listen to it.
See, I haven't listened to that episode yet. I have not been caught up yet.
Okay.
One of the things that I missed.
Yeah. No. I'll tell you. So I've been in the flooring industry for 5 years. And we'll do this real quick. So 5 years, a little over 2 on my own now. And I learned that I have a very strong personality, and I will tell you what I'm thinking, whether I should say it or not. So I ended up needing to find another career in my early 30s. And I liked working with wood in high school and middle school. So I thought about all the different things I could do working with wood. And, there was framing and cabinet making and this, that, and the other thing. And I finally came upon wood flooring in my head. And so I looked up anybody I could find in like 3 or 4 towns near me that had wood flooring in their business name. And I called them and asked for a job.
Oh, okay.
So
that worked out.
2 guys wanted to hire me. I got my 2 years experience that I needed. And I applied. Well, I ended up having to go out on my own without a license in my state for a little bit, but then I got some money together. I got licensed,
Breaking the
bonded,
law.
insured, all that stuff, and here I am. So,
All right.
that's
So
the quick background.
my next question would be pro knees or crane.
I rock the AP16s right now, and I
There you
absolutely
go.
love them.
See, there's something we can agree on.
Okay. I mean, look, I'll eat the pineapple and the ham on a pizza, but it's not what I'm going to order.
Yeah, I literally just had one last week. I got a head cold, so I ordered me a pizza with extra garlic from an Italian place, and they did not disappoint on the extra garlic.
Well, there you go.
Picked that head cold in a couple of days.
I bet. All right. Here's an interesting place to take this. So obviously, if we run into problems, we need to check that we're doing our installs properly, and then we can go and call the customer service number. We can get in touch with our reps. We can troubleshoot from there. But you have moved out of the industry and into a rep position, and so that's going to take some different growth and stuff. So how, just besides not being able to like physically do the work anymore, or not wanting to, and wanting to move to a warmer climate, how did that change come about? Was that something you knew you were going to do at some point? Because I think a lot of guys get scared. There's guys that are 70 years old and still installing.
Right. And I knew that wasn't going to be the case for me. I was trying to get off my knees, and that was the reason I moved to maintenance. With maintenance, part of it was that I was getting bored. Yeah, part of it was I wanted to move south, and we talked about it for years. But part of it, I was getting bored doing the same jobs, week in and week out, doing the same process every day.
Mm-hmm.
So I got kind of bored, and I wanted to move on to a different career path. And when I saw the opportunity with Metro Floor, it looked like a great way to take my skills, and move into a different part of the industry.
Do you not do the same thing day in and day out now, sitting in a cubicle answering phone calls?
Well, I don't sit in a cubicle. What I do day in and day out now is different. Yes, most of what I do, or I shouldn't say most of what I do, day to day, I do phone calls for Home Depot. It's when customer service needs extra technical help. But I also take new products, and we're writing the installation instructions on new products. We're testing new products. We're doing quality control. There's a lot of different facets, and I get to work with almost every person in our business because we're in technical. We touch almost every part of the business. So it's very exciting. It's something different every day.
Okay.
And that's broken up by doing trade shows or doing, site visits or training and stuff like that.
Okay. So still lots of variety.
A lot of variety. Yes, definitely. It's something different almost every day. I mean, there's days where we're testing products on the floor. There's other days we're testing products on the ceiling, and that's a lot of fun to me to see which glue works the best, or which locking system is best, or is this product better in a 4 mil product or a 5 mil product, and actually going through the testing process and looking at all that.
Okay. So there's still the variety, because one of the reasons why I like installation so much is that, one, I get a new place to go to work, usually at least once a week. Sometimes a job runs a little bit longer, if not a couple times a week, if I have a bunch of smaller jobs lined up. I don't have to go report to the same cubicle. I get to go look at something new, interact with new people. There's a lot of variety. It doesn't get stale. And
that was something I loved about the business as well. And I still get that. I talk to salespeople all day, and I talk to customers all day. So, and I'm definitely a people person when it comes to that. When customer service gets that customer that's angry and frustrated, I strive on those calls, and I love to take that customer and get him to the point where he's happy and he's going in the right direction with his install. So it's something that I strive on, something I like to do.
Mm-hmm. No, I like that. And so you were able to still find the variety by staying in the industry, just in a different aspect of it.
In a different way. And, there is we all talk about the shortage of installers that's out there. There's also a shortage of good technical guys in the manufacturing part of it, and manufacturing side of it. Mm-hmm. There's a shortage of real good, solid technical guys. So if guys, think about a different avenue in this industry, that's definitely a good avenue, because we need guys that know what the heck they're doing.
Okay. So, I mean, we definitely have options as we're looking to change. Maybe we don't want to run our business anymore. Maybe we're getting too old to do it. There's options out there, and they don't even have to be. You don't have to be in Georgia to do it. I know a lot of flooring stuff is based in Georgia, but take Bostic, for example. They're based out of Wisconsin. You could be a rep in your region for any number of companies, even just between, even just looking at like self-leveling companies. You've got you got Custom, you got Uzin and Shonox, Bostic. There's probably others I'm not even thinking of, but I mean, there's 4 companies you could look for a job with right there. Just being,
and I would think the more competitive guys could look into moving into sales.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to be a competitive guy to be in sales, because it's a whole different ball game over there. It's all about landing that sale, not about making that floor look beautiful.
Well, as long as they're smart, they should have realized they've been a salesman this whole time. Because I don't care what, especially if you're running your own show, you're in sales. Whether you want to believe it or not, you're in sales. It's just that's
right.
The story.
If nothing else, you're selling yourself.
Correct. You have to sell yourself to sell getting the install. You're selling something. You're selling that floor, whether you believe it or not. When you sit there and you talk to that potential client, you are selling yourself. You're selling the install. If you're selling them product than you're selling the product. You're a salesperson.
Now, that being said, retail carpet sales was one of the dreariest jobs that I ever had. I did about a year and a half, 2 years of that.
Interesting.
And it was definitely just sitting in that showroom and talking to people about their jobs all day was definitely a tough job. I don't think I would ever want to go back to that, but I would think a field rep somewhere where you're, like you said, you're out looking at different jobs every day would be an exciting career path, I think.
Yeah, there's definitely, you know, I enjoy selling the product when I go out on a job, and I'm, you know, it puts a couple extra bucks in my pocket being able to do that. But I don't know that I would want to sell full time out of a showroom. There's some other interesting areas in the industry that you could get into and work for. You know, you could probably find a company to try and do some R&D stuff if you're one of these guys that's coming up with little inventions to try and make things easier. And there's guys that are marketing their own tools now that I've seen. There's a couple companies that have come along over the past, I don't know, 3.5, 4 years that I've been on some of the Facebook groups, and guys are, look, I made this and I'm going to, you know, Bullet Tools picked it up, or I'm marketing it on my own.
Well, and then moving into maintenance is another way to get up off your knees. You know, you take that experience that you have with floor, you can move into a different part of flooring. And actually, you can make more money cleaning floors than you can installing floors, because there's just the per square foot rates have not come up the way they should have over the past, but it's still there for the maintenance side of it. Okay, so that's definitely an avenue for a lot of guys. You know, if you have flooring skills, the maintenance side is definitely a good avenue.
I got a buddy that runs a demo only company now because his knees got shot and he was a tile setter. He says the same thing. There's more money in demo than actually putting it in, which
I can see that. Yeah.
Which is interesting. You know, you can, when you get into specialty services, you get to charge more, but it's the same goes for the install. And so I don't want to tell anybody to get out of it or that rates are low. You gotta charge what you're worth. And that's one of the goals of the show.
I think that's a real key, is charging what you're worth and learning how to charge what you're worth, and not getting stuck in that square foot pricing hole where everybody wants to say, well, it's $1.50 a foot. Well, every job is different. So yeah, it might be $1.50 a foot, but you know, you should be pricing the job more on a gross margin way of thinking than a per foot way of thinking, because every job is going to be different.
Yes. No, it totally. And you gotta know your numbers. If you don't know what it costs to run your business for a day and what you need to clear to pay your taxes, pay your overhead, all of that fun stuff, then you're not going to know what to charge. And you can break it down to a square foot price.
And exactly, you can break it all down, but you've got to come down to your gross margins. And if you hit your gross margins every job, your net margins should fall in line. If you've done your homework on the front side on your insurances and you know, your maintenance and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, you gotta know your numbers. Stop putting everything in a box. Stop handing it over to a CPA at the end of the year and letting them dig through it and say, hey, look at that. My bank account has positive money in it. Go me.
Well, and that's one of those things that's difficult, you know, when we're a flooring guy and that's what we're out there learning, you don't learn the business side of it. So there's got to be avenues out there, ways that you can take the classes or on something online to learn how to run your business. Because when you're a flooring installer, you're not just a flooring installer. You're running a business.
Yes. And that's obviously, you know, that you've probably listened to enough episodes to know that, I mean, that's one of the goals of this show. That's why we're here. That's why we discuss this stuff. But this exists because I couldn't find flooring podcasts. So when I created this, I thought it was the only one. I then learned that there were others as I got this up and running, and others came out about the same time I released.
Yeah, those guys are all hacks. Those guys are all hacks. This is the best one.
I would love to believe that, but we're all great. We all have different things to offer.
No,
but,
everybody in the industry
know,
really needs to help bring each other up.
Correct.
You know, we love to joke with each other, but we're a lot of us are here to bring each other up.
That's exactly it. But you know, I gave up listening to music about 50% of the time at work, and I've said this a million times, and I'll continue to say it. Stop listening to the music, put in some headphones, get an audiobook, because I know you don't have time to go to school. I didn't. I'm sure when you were doing it and had kids at home and stuff like that and trying to run around and do estimates, you don't have time.
Right.
Put in an audiobook, educate yourself on business principles, on investing, on whatever. I don't care if you want to learn how to flip homes. There's books on it. Just get a book and listen to it. Even if you only catch 10% out of that entire book, you now have 10% more knowledge than you had before you started it. And you do that a bunch of times, you're going to pick up on stuff. You're going to better your position. So that's why this podcast is here. You're going to be able to get a little something from it. You get some audiobooks in there. You're going to get a little something more out of it. And so you have to continue to push and get that education, because that's for sure where I was coming from. I didn't know, I understood basic business principles. The money's not mine, which is a rule that a lot of guys need to learn, and why you see a lot of contractors go under. When you get that deposit check, that's not yours.
Yeah, you're right.
Stop spending it to pay the payroll from last job. That check is for the materials, and probably, if depending on how you're getting your deposits, payroll for that job. The check you get at the end when everything is done, that's your money. So, and then you need to take the taxes out. Stop. It's not even all yours.
And then even then, if there's a problem on that job, that might not be your money yet.
Correct. So I know you don't have time to go to school, but you've got to find ways to educate yourself and find better ways to run your business, how taxes are going to work, how payroll is going to work, how to market better, how to be better at sales, how to communicate better. I mean, you can take any avenue of it and get a book on it and read it. Because I know you don't have time to read at home. I don't either. That's why I'm doing the audiobooks. That's why we're making the podcast. You've got to find a different way to do it. But if you're here, you're already a step ahead of everybody else, because there's not a lot of people in this space.
Well said.
And I think, you were probably doing the same thing, especially as you moved around in the business. So what kind of things were you doing to grow, not only as a business person, but as an employee when you were with these companies, to, better assist them, especially as an employee? Like, you've got to bring value to the table.
Well, I was never afraid to ask the question or say that I don't know. If there was something that I didn't know, I said, I don't know. It's not something that I picked up along the way. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And never be afraid to say that, because when you're afraid to say that, you're never going to learn. So I was never afraid to say that. One of the things that I picked up when I moved to maintenance was how to actually price a job properly. And I can't believe it took me that many years to actually learn how to price a job properly. It was one of my bosses that came to me and said, okay, well, this is how you're supposed to price a job. And what had happened is we had lost our sales guy, and I was asked to sit in the sales guy's role until they got a new sales guy, which ended up being a good 8 months. Mm-hmm. So I had to learn how to price jobs properly so that they came out in the end to be profitable. So asking the question is basically the way that I was learning. I had a dad that was good in business, and I would always call him. I would call Dad and say, what do I do?
Okay.
So there's other avenues out there. Just call someone who knows and ask the question.
Mm-hmm. And it goes back to the principle you were told in school. There is no dumb question. Maybe there's some guy in the corner that laughs at you.
Right. Yeah.
Who cares? When you get the answer and you're able to do better, what's more important? Your pride or being more successful?
Well, and I think the forums have gone a long way towards that. When I was coming up, we didn't have Facebook or mm-hmm. internet. No, we didn't have the forums. Now, if you're having a problem with a product on a job, you can get on there quick and with, what is there, more than 5,000 members of FIA?
Probably.
You can get on there real quick and get an answer. If nothing else, Ken Ballin is going to tag the guy who's responsible and get you an answer faster. So we didn't have that back then, but now you go to that, use that as a resource. There's a lot of resources out there, but that's a real good one there.
Correct. And I think that's great. And look, you ask the right question, you're going to get 100 responses.
And you're going to
you need to check, but you need to check those responses.
You're also going to get that kid in the corner that laughs at you, and that's part of the internet life, and we all deal with that. And that's one of the things I like about the FIA, platform, is that guy gets squashed pretty quickly.
Yeah, there's definitely some better forums to participate in for content like that. Sure, you're gonna get your balls busted if you post something up and it's it's got a stairway to heaven in it.
Oh yeah,
Everyone's going to bust your balls.
Don't be putting blades under the carpet.
Yep, that one too. But there's guys that are going to come along and say, "Hey, man, everything else looks solid. Why'd you choose to install it that way?" And that's who you're looking for. Where's the constructive criticism instead of the like just ragging on you? But that definitely wasn't around. I know we've talked in a previous episode where the workroom setting years ago, and maybe depending on where you're working still, there's a lot of a competitive nature. You don't want that guy to get the job because you want the job. Whereas we need to build each other up and share that knowledge. Because if the other guy's producing top quality work and I'm producing top quality work, then we're both going to continue to eat instead of having to try and throw somebody under the bus just to make sure I can eat. That's not doing anybody any favors.
Right.
Well, let's see. Boy, talking about when to call our rep, then we've gone off into who knows where, which that's fine. That's what we're all about here. What I kind of want to get back on topic a little bit. You know, what do we... When do I absolutely just know I have to call you? And we kind of touched on it, and it was like, you know, read the instructions, call if you're having a problem. But
yeah, once you go back to basics and you make sure that everything that should be your responsibility to take care of is taken care of, that's when I would call the manufacturer. Make sure you don't have humps first. Now, I get calls from people that are like, "Yep, I've already checked that," and then you find out later that's the problem. But so once you go back to basics, you make sure that it's not a site problem. That's the point at which you call the manufacturer and get somebody in the technical department to give you help.
Okay. And they're going to walk us through, and we're going to take it step by step, make sure that I did everything right.
We're going to ask those questions that you probably already know, but we've got to go through because we've got a lot of these calls every day, and people tend to leave things out or outright lie to us. So a lot of times we've got to ask the questions in the right way. But once we get through and figure out that, yeah, it looks like he's doing it right. And that's why a lot of times I'll send videos. I give these people my cell phone number, and I'll send videos, or they'll send videos to me or pictures. And a picture is worth 1,000 words. A video is worth even more. And real quickly, we can identify what the problem is. Maybe they're not tapping it right, or they're using the wrong hammer, or they're using the wrong tapping block or something like that. So we can get through it real quickly that way, which helps a lot.
Okay. So, you know, we're going to walk through all the basic stuff. I already went through. I followed the instructions. I'm doing all of that. And you basically end up telling me that I'm doing it wrong. We find the problem, and I feel really dumb. Does it matter?
No, it doesn't matter. No, I never put it that way. I mean, we've got a problem. We got to work to the solution. And yeah, if we find out that it's something that you're doing, if nothing else, you learned the right way to do it. Mm-hmm. When I get phone calls from installers, one of the things that I hear a lot is, I've been doing this for 25, I've been doing this for 30 years. That doesn't mean a whole lot to me. This is a newer product. And if you haven't installed this specific product, there are some nuances to it that you need to understand.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how long you've been installing. If you've got a problem, you're calling me, you and I are going to work together. I'm not trying to belittle you. We're just trying to figure out what the problem on the site is.
Correct. Well, you want them to be just as successful as they want to be, because that's, at the end of the day, that's your product, and you want it to look great and survive and have a great install and not have to file a warranty claim down the road or anything like that. So right. You're on our side.
Yes, that's the best way to look at it.
Okay. And you make a good point that guys call you up and I've been doing this for 20 years. Well, Ken Balin always loves to come along and he points out, well, have they been doing it the same way for 20 years or have they been continually learning for 20 years? So, you either have 1 year experience repeated 20 times or you have 20 years of experience.
So how many products are we installing that we were installing 20 years ago? And are we doing it the same way? Mm-hmm. One of the struggles that I had when I moved into Metro Floor is that I hadn't been installing for 20 years. once I learned how lucrative carpet cleaning was, I kind of backed off on the installation side of it. So for 15, 20 years, so I didn't have that LVT experience when I came to Metro Floor. So there was a little bit of learning curve that I had to go through on that one.
I think that's a great point. You didn't keep up, and you had to catch up. And so
Right.
If you're not out there getting that education, staying on top of what's going on, there's definitely going to be a bigger learning curve, and so you can't.
So when I was installing, it was a Pergo floating floor. That's not installed the same way as a vinyl floating floor. You know, there's a lot of similarities to it, but it's not exactly the same installation. There's nuances to each of them. So, just because you've been doing it 20 years doesn't mean you've been working with this product for 20 years.
And when Pergo first came out, it wasn't in planks, right? It was like panels, and you had to glue them together and strap it and stuff like that.
Yes.
Which is way different than what's going on now.
It was a messy process.
No fun. I think I took one out at one point, and it weirded me out when I started pulling it apart. I was like, wait, what is this? This isn't what it's supposed to be. So, learning and,
if nothing else, you can make a connection with those technical people. I always will. I'm free to give you my phone number. I would think that most of the technical guys would be the same, so that when you have a problem on a job, you don't have to go through customer service anymore. You can call that guy directly and say, "Hey, I've got a problem. What do I do?"
Yeah. No, I
haven't. Just build that connection. If you've got a problem with a product, build that relationship with those technical people with that product.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm with you. I haven't met a rep yet that isn't on my side to make sure that the job gets done correctly and wants me to genuinely succeed and be successful with my business and with their product. And so you also point out building that relationship with them and having it, okay, yeah, sure, you don't have to talk to customer service anymore. You can go directly to them. But for the guys that are, well, even for the store owners, besides guys that are installers only, by having that relationship. Jim, do you have friends? Do they need floors?
Yeah, you're right.
Huh. Are you going to recommend a really good installer in some city where that installer is located?
Right.
Huh. So there's more to it than just being able to call them and skip a customer service line or be able to get good customer service with that product. Yeah. So by building those relationships, you don't ever know where your next project will come from. They got friends too.
It's a good point.
All right. So we've called you up. We've got it settled. I feel like an idiot, but at the end of the day, I'm more successful. And I think that's really, that's what matters, is that at the end of the day, you've made us successful.
And let's talk about the one more thing. Let's say it is defective product. We're saying 95+% of the time it's not. So on that one job where it is defective product, what do you do at that point?
Okay.
A lot of times what happens with us is the claims process starts with the claims representatives, and I don't know much about the claims process itself. I receive the material in, and what we'll find is they'll just pull 2 boxes off the shelf and send us 2 boxes. And we put it together and there's nothing wrong with it. We need product that's indicative of what's going on the job.
Okay.
And so a lot of times, and what happens is they'll box up 2 boxes that are on the job and just stick them into UPS and send them to us. And they show up beat up and we can't do anything with it.
Yeah.
So, those are some of those things that you need to think about. So if it is a problem with the product, how do we prove it to the manufacturer that is a problem with the product? Let's send them product that is actually bad, and let's protect it so that when it gets there, they can see that it's bad.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think that's great. How do you win a claim when they can't do anything with the products you sent them?
Right. And I have to do it every once in a while where I have to my claim report says it was too damaged to test. Mm-hmm. And at this point, it's an invalid claim, which sometimes makes it more difficult to get that attic stock off of the job because maybe they sent you 2 boxes from the job and they don't have any more.
Yeah.
All they had. So, it is a struggle every day.
It is. A little bit of planning will, ounce of, I can't even think of the saying. What is it? An ounce of prevention for...
or a pound of cure.
Yeah, there it is. That's what it comes down to. If you're going to do proper floor prep, then you generally don't end up with other issues because 90% of the job is floor prep. So it all goes in the same circles. The process is always the same. So don't just ship something, ship it so that it's going to survive, especially when it's going cross country and you don't know who's handling it.
And the part of the product is the product is very heavy. So when UPS chucks it in the back of the truck, the edges get broken up and you can't put that product together.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Jim, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate the insights. I loved that you turned the tables on me and turned it into Jim Freeman's podcast for a minute.
I'm going to start my podcast next week.
Oh, okay.
You'll find that next week. It's Freeman's University of Carpet Knowledge.
There's a market. There's a market.
Yeah, I'm kidding. I don't have time for that anyway.
Yeah. Tell me about it. I don't know how this one gets produced.
You can attest to that one.
But no, I love that you came on. You used some of that old knowledge from broadcasting that you had and applied it. It was great. Why don't you go ahead and let everybody know who you are again, where you're at, how they can reach you if they want to reach out to you.
All right. Yeah, no problem. It's Jim Freeman. My cell number is 717-649-2409. If you don't get me, if I don't pick up, definitely leave me a voicemail because I'm probably talking to a customer. You can definitely find me on the Flooring Installers forum, FIA, Flooring Installers of America. You can direct message me, and I will pick up my phone whenever I'm awake to take care of your problems.
And I can attest, guys. He's also in the Floored-U-Cation group. I know he's in Jim's in a couple other groups. Reach out to him. If you are using one of these life-proof floors from Home Depot as you're doing an install for one of your clients and you're having a problem, tag him, take a picture, post it up. He's going to get back to you. You have his cell phone number now.
If nothing else, just text me a picture and say, what am I doing wrong? Or what do you think's going on here?
Yeah. You're very attentive. You care. You want to see it be successful. And so it's great. And like I said, I know you're responsive. So thank you for being on. Thank you for your insights.
Thank
so
you
much
for
knowledge.
Great. It was great. This was awesome.
Yes. And I look forward to doing it again. I'm sure we can find way more things to cover than just you being a rep and how I don't like pineapple pizza.
All right. Well, I'll have more questions written for you for the next time.
All right. Sounds good, Jim. Have a good day.
Thanks for having me on.
Bye. That's all the time we have for this week. To keep the conversation going, head on over to the Floored-U-Cation Facebook group. Be sure to subscribe so you can hear each and every episode. We can be found on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and most major podcast directories. Don't forget to leave a review and let us know what you think about the show. If you'd like to be a guest, have questions or feedback, you can email us at flooreducation@gmail.com. You can help support the show by becoming a patron over at patreon.com/flooreducation. If you need a discount on your tools, check out toolsforflooring.com and use discount code FLOORED for 5% off. Remember, your education never stops.